I met my pastor privately. First thing I met my wife, and she asked me what was going on because she could tell that I wasn't comfortable at church anymore.
Hmm.
And I had to tell her that I no longer believe that Jesus is God or the Messiah. And wow, that was a bitter pill for her to swallow. I mean, huge slap in the face. I had to sleep on the couch for a couple of nights. We had very serious discussions as to whether or not we should even stay together. And in our case, when my wife and I initially had discussions, when I told her I no longer believe in Jesus, one of the deciding factors of us staying together, one of the contingencies is
Got it.
she has to raise our son in the church as a Christian. And I'm okay with that because I was raised as a Christian. I was able to see past it,
Hmm.
and he may eventually as well.
Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Testimonial Tuesdays. You're probably not seeing this on a Tuesday, but that's okay. New friend in town, Mr. Ben Edwards. How are you? And thank you for agreeing to share your testimony with the world.
Doing well. Thank you for the invite.
Very good, very good. So you have as we discussed a little bit earlier, you have a very interesting, I would say, heavily sedated past. Not that you weren't aware, but when I find people who have been really, really deep-rooted, like myself, sometimes I look at it like I was sedated with their drugs, So anyway, that being said, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. But once again, glad you're here. So tell us just a little bit about yourself now, your current situation.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Ben Edward. I live in lovely Quebec on the outskirts of Montreal
Nice.
in Canada, and married for going back 22 years with a beautiful boy. He's going to be going to kindergarten in the fall.
Wonderful.
And I am part of Montreal's Jewish community, and I attend a conservative shul.
Okay, cool. As an ex-Christian, which is why you're here today to tell
Right.
that story. Very cool. Thank you for that quick summary there. Okay, so why don't we take it back? Let's go back to your heritage before you were born.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about your grandparents and great grandparents, if you can remember back, if you know back that far.
Okay. Well, on both sides, the way I grew up, everyone was Christian. My paternal grandparents came from the Christian Reformed movement. They raised my dad in that movement. My mom was raised by Baptists. Her father was a Baptist minister. And when my parents got married, they were both actively involved in a Baptist church. And so they raised me and my siblings in a Baptist church, in the Baptist traditions, in a Baptist faith community.
How many siblings do
I
you
went
have?
to, uh, I had four, two brothers, two sisters. One of my sisters unfortunately passed away
Very
several years ago.
sorry about that.
But
Condolences.
yeah, we all were raised in the Baptist faith tradition. When I was a young adult, I decided to become somewhat of a heretic and renounce the Baptist faith community to join a Pentecostal faith community, tongues and everything.
Nice.
And so I was
So
a
you
part of
spoke.
that.
So you spoke in tongues,
Absolutely.
dude. Yes, finally someone else. I did too.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And
continue
as an
on.
academic, I guess I could revisit the question, but people ask me, just as an aside, as an academic, how could you have accepted that? But maybe we can attack that question later.
Sure.
But anyway, I was involved in that for over 20 years, and I was really into it. I was on fire, as you used to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a deacon, and I was a worship leader for over 20 years. And so, all the hill songs and vertical worship
Mm-hmm.
and all that.
Yep.
I did that in our church. When I moved to Canada, I went to a French-speaking church, and I actually led worship in French.
What? That's crazy. Very cool. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So what was it? Of course, since you were raised, hold on, I'm going to write down this name real fast because
Mhm.
I was thinking of one of the big staples that I used to listen to because I was so much into listening to Christian podcasts so much
Mhm.
while I was a teacher. I couldn't get enough. And there was one I really loved. His name was Rod Parsley, and
Oh, yeah.
I had forgotten his name until you said something that triggered that. So I'm going to write his name down real fast.
Yeah,
Parsley.
Rod Parsley.
I think
He
we're.
spoke like Yosemite Sam,
Oh
in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah. He
Straight
was
shooter.
man. He was a hardcore, like constantly sweating and just like rah. Not hell on
Hmm.
fire and brimstone, but just strong. He was so powerful of a speaker.
Intense. Yeah.
Yeah, intense. There, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, cool. So with that being said, your grandparents so into it, and your whole family for decades back, it's however long. Um, I know you were raised in it, but as you got older, what was your earliest, if you can, like right now, just the earliest time you remember something fascinating about the New Testament that made you think, wow, this New Testament stuff is really good. How young were you or old were you to where you really think you embraced Christianity?
I embraced it from a very early age. Probably 5 years old was my first experience where I proverbially prayed the sinner's prayer, and I loved God. And of course, I attributed everything good about God to Jesus, as
Hmm.
Christians are taught to do. And so my love was directed toward that personification of God. And, I didn't like people, but I loved that personification of God that loved me unconditionally. And actually, one of the strengths and weaknesses, big weakness in retrospect of Christianity, is their unconditional love that does not require repentance.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's really wild. How old were you when you decided that you wanted to do some teaching, that you wanted to take it to the next level?
Yeah, as far as I should probably clarify that being a deacon in our church was really more of a financial administrator or a member of the board of administration more than
Okay.
anything else.
Okay.
But as far as teaching, I was able to teach New Testament because I enjoyed it. I loved the message of repentance. I loved the not necessarily of repentance. I apologize. I'm going to correct that. I liked the forgiveness.
Hmm.
I liked the unconditional love that the personification of God, of the protagonist of the New Testament, had to offer humanity. Just no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, it doesn't matter. I love that message. I personified that message because I did whatever I wanted, and God would forgive me. Because as a famous bumper sticker said, not perfect, just forgiven.
Yes, I remember that. Right. So, with all of the knowing what we know now,
Hmm.
knowing that the New Testament is flooded with contradictions, back
Hmm.
then, I'm sure you probably noticed some, but for me, I noticed them, but to me, I was like, some things just can't be explained, so I accepted that. How did you deal with as you began to see issues that things that didn't line up just in the New Testament alone, comparing New Testament to New Testament things? How did you deal with that? How did you justify continuing on knowing that?
Well, I started noticing contradictions or conflicts even as a teenager, and I would bring them to different pastors that I knew, and they would always explain it in a certain way. For example, the two genealogies, one in Matthew, one in Luke, they don't jibe. What's going on with that? And of course, one just said, well, one of them is Joseph, one of them is Mary,
Right.
because in that custom, that wasn't customary to name the woman, but her husband instead. So that's kind of how they explained it. And so I learned to kind of dance around the conflicts the way Christians are kind of taught to do, because every faith, bar none, really, is based on some element of circular reasoning. And the circular reasoning is always starts with and ends with a statement of faith based on a sacred text. And you swear allegiance to that text. That text becomes your answer for everything. And if you don't understand it, well, then it's just a mystery that you have to accept. And that's kind of how I accepted it. It was circular reasoning based on a faith statement of accepting as a prerequisite that the New Testament was divinely inspired. And so, since I assumed that it was divinely inspired, if I couldn't understand something, I figured, as I was taught, that it must be my misunderstanding. It's God's ways are higher than our ways.
Oh yeah.
It's mysterious. Yeah, exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
And so, interestingly enough, had a prior version, a Christian version of myself, spoken to me today, I would have just said, you have to just trust God in that. It's a mystery, and you just have to put it in His hands. That's inspired, and you accept it as inspired, and it is what it is, man. Just I don't know. I learned not to ask so many questions, and I
Of
learned,
course.
and
Yep.
it's true. You have to at one point you have to learn that you can't understand everything. There are some things you cannot understand, so you just have to accept.
Yeah. According to Christianity, yeah, right. very
Yeah,
good.
and to a point, that's even true in Judaism. I mean, we accept that Moses was dictated the Torah, not because we have empirical proof, but we just accept that, and that's what it is. That's
I
the
would
basis of our.
I would say it's a little different because in
Mhm,
every other religion, it's the revelation has come to one man.
mhm,
Whether it's Joseph Smith or whether it was the Apostle Paul or whatever the case may be. But with Judaism, it wasn't so. It was that God revealed Himself to the full nation at one time,
right.
and you can't really fake that. I mean, of course, we weren't. You and I were not there as we're in 2025. We weren't present at that moment, but
Mhm,
it's kind of hard to fake a religion that was revealed to the entire nation of Israel. You know what I mean? It's the only religion that claims that. So it is different
mhm,
in that. And of course, it still takes faith to believe that. But if you take the
mhm,
practical thought process of it, how likely is that to have been something that was faked? First of all, it would have had to happen, or the story would have had to been told. Let's say Moses told the story. Maybe Moses told the
mhm,
people there, God revealed before y'all showed up, there was a million people here.
mhm,
So being able to fake that is one thing, and then being able to tell that story down, hand that story down to generation to generation to generation. They wouldn't have been able to do that if it didn't happen. They wouldn't have been able to do that because the first generation would have known it was fake and they wouldn't tell their kids. So you would have to skip
mhm,
like 5, 6 generations, 10 generations, and then retell the story when there was no more witnesses. But then no one would believe it either. So it's one of
mhm,
those things where Judaism does stand alone in that,
mhm.
as far as being separate from other religions.
Agreed.
So your journey going to let me back up. Your wife and children. So you had how long have you been married now?
A little over 22 years,
Okay. So and how long have you been out of the New Testament completely, where you just said forget the New Testament?
about 2.5 years.
Cool. Okay. So your wife was kind of with you along this whole traveling journey, sort
Well,
of.
that's the controversial part.
Let's
A
hear it.
lot of That's the controversial part because in Orthodoxy, the prevailing belief is that you cannot choose Judaism if your spouse does not come with you.
Right.
However, there are some communities that look at halacha differently, and my rabbi is part of that community. He was actually born and he was ordained Orthodox, but he later became conservative. And he and the Beit Din, the local Beit Din, they are accustomed to allowing somebody to convert without their spouse, so long as it does not disrupt shalom bayis,
Right.
peace in the home.
Hmm.
And so that is the controversial part, where a lot of people will say, "Well, he's not really Jewish." But if my rabbi, with his knowledge of halakha and the
Hmm.
Beit Din's knowledge of halakha, were able to accept me, then to me that's what matters, and everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Sure.
But it's very stressful, and I can see why most Orthodox rabbis won't touch such a relationship because it can and often does disrupt peace in the home.
So
And
you're currently now she's still Christian.
yeah,
Okay.
very
Uh,
much so.
okay. So my wife years ago worked for a guy named Larry Merkel, or not, no, not Larry Merkel, another name. But this guy was Jewish.
Hmm.
He was happily married to
Hmm.
while she was working with him. He was happily married to his Catholic wife for years, and they never divorced. They just lived happy lives together, being
Hmm.
Jewish and Catholic. He never went to her church. She never went to the synagogue, but they carried on a healthy, happy relationship somehow. So it's possible. It's doable. Of course, our
For sure.
prayers would be that your wife would come along, and your children as well. Okay, so you got into one question that because I saw your Facebook page when I saw the
Hmm.
picture, and I was like, this guy. I'm like, I'm not sure he was ever Christian. He looks more like someone who's never Christian before. So then my next thought was there are a lot of people infiltrating the Jewish faith that are secret, hidden messianics. So I have I've ended a lot of conversations with one particular question
Hmm.
that tends to reveal things because either
Hmm.
either the person I'm talking to is going to lie, which
Hmm.
wouldn't work for him because of the verse in the New Testament where Jesus said, "If you deny me before men, then I will
Hmm.
deny you before my Father who's in heaven." So I believe that
Right.
New Testament believers, if they really believe that, they won't lie when asked this question.
Hmm.
And the question is, do you believe Jesus in any way was greater than Moses?
No,
Fire away, baby.
not at all.
Good. Yeah. Yeah.
There's even no historical consensus that Jesus even existed.
Yeah.
And of the people who believe he existed, a lot of them believe that the historical Jesus is not the same
Yeah.
as the mythical, legendary Jesus
Now,
that
now,
was written about by the authors and redactors of the New Testament.
and by Jesus, I mean any aspect of him, Yeshua, Yehoshua, by any name whatsoever. You reject,
Whatever they
you
want to
reject,
call him today,
you
this
reject
week,
all that. That's good. Okay, cool.
of course.
Very good, very good. Okay, so now we've gotten you're full blown into your Christian teaching, and you were already aware of conflict in their verses, all over the New Testament. But you just you learned to overlook them and accept
Of
them
course.
as I just don't understand them. So, at what point did you think you started understanding to where it started becoming a problem for your teaching?
That was probably about 2.5 years ago,
Okay.
maybe closer to 3 years ago. I started actually studying Hebrew because I wanted to understand the Bible better. And I wanted to get to partially, part of it was driven by the perceived conflicts. A lot of Christians who have problems with those conflicts will call them perceived conflicts
Right.
because we want to convince ourselves that they're not truly conflicts. But we just want to say, oh, we perceive them as conflicts, but they're not really conflicts.
Right.
Well, at the end of the day, they're really
They're
conflicts.
really conflicts. Yes.
But anyway, I wanted to learn biblical Hebrew and Greek. And of course, I shelved the Greek after I started learning Hebrew because just so many things jumped out at me with the eternal nature of the covenant with Israel at Sinai. And I started looking into little videos of why Jews do not accept Jesus or Yeshua or Yehoshua or Yahusha as Messiah. And it really struck a chord. I could not come to the conclusion, as I once had, that Jews were just deaf, dumb, and blind or stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
They actually had legitimate reasons. And so I mulled over those reasons. And once I realized, it was a snowball effect of one thing after another. The New Testament claim that Jesus is the only exclusive way to the Father in John 14:6 could not be true if there was a pre-existing eternal covenant that did not involve him at all. That statement just cannot be true. And so, again, going to Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, that nobody knows who really wrote it,
Mm-hmm.
the prevailing claim is that the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross was once and for all, and there's no more sacrifice required. But you compare that to all the prophecies that say that sacrifices will be restored in the third temple, including sin sacrifices. What gives? It's a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I just saw the conflicts repeating one after another, I just had to just throw out the New Testament. And
How did you get to throw it out though? Did you come across, because you're teaching,
Mhm.
you're not the pastor of the church. Did you approach the pastor or someone else and say, hey, I need to explain this to people. How do I do that? Did you go that route?
I met my pastor privately. First thing, I met my wife, and she asked me what was going on because she could tell that I wasn't comfortable at church anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to tell her that I no longer believed that Jesus is God or the Messiah. And wow, that was a bitter pill for her to swallow. Huge slap in the face. I had to sleep on the couch for a couple of nights. We had very serious discussions as to whether or not we should even stay together. So once my wife was aware of it, not at peace with it yet, we decided that we needed to talk to my pastor. I spoke to my pastor, told him of my concerns of the conflicts between the two testaments as I knew them at the time. He referred me to a Bible scholar at a local Bible college. It has a French name, so I won't name it because nobody will understand what I say. But, and this all happened in French, by the way.
Oh, wow. That's
And
fun.
so I talked to the dean of this Bible college, and he was supposedly more of an expert at what they call the New Testament, or the Old Testament, versus my pastor. My pastor actually he said, you know something? I'm not going to debate with you, Ben. I'm not an expert at the Old Testament, but I want you to talk to this guy. He's an expert at the Old Testament. I wanted you to discuss your concerns with him and let me know how it goes. So I made an appointment with actually the president of this Bible college, who agreed to meet with me over lunch. I explained my conflicts with him and the way I feel, and he said, Ben, if you believe like that, what the heck are you doing in church?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, this is all recent to me. It's very new to me, and I've come to believe this way just recently. And so he wished me well, and he said, just stay away from the traditions of men.
I'll be not realizing
Yeah,
that
and
Christianity is full of them.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
praying like
Ironically,
praying before the meal, and not that that's a bad
ironically,
thing, but yeah, that's
yeah.
great. Wow, that's
So
insane.
anyway, that was basically my way out the door. I had to tell my pastor officially that I no longer intend to attend church. I had to withdraw my membership. And since I was a very visible member of the church, I was in front of the church leading worship regularly. He actually had to announce a formal announcement in front of everybody. And my wife agreed that it was best to avoid people harassing her needlessly with the same questions over and over. Where's your husband? What's he doing?
Hmm.
Why I haven't seen him recently? So they actually issued a formal public statement in front of the church that Ben no longer shares our faith and he will no longer be, attending our church.
You know,
And
it's wild. My
mhm,
brain is thinking for you that was a good thing. Probably
yeah,
not a good thing for his church because now you've got people in the church member looking at this guy who's been there
mhm,
for all these years or all this time, such a
right,
dedicated servant of what they call the Christ, and now
right.
he's like doesn't believe anymore. You can't. God, man, that would have just triggered so many thoughts in so many people to maybe to start researching it for themselves too. Who knows, right?
Yeah, I got people asking me about it actually. But my former pastor, it's rare for people to say this about a Christian, but he's a true mensch
That's
in the
cool.
sense that, he was very gracious to me throughout the whole exit process.
Nice.
He told everyone to be kind to my wife and kid, and everyone was kind to them, and they still are to this day. And so the pain of her having to go through the basically the brunt of everybody's criticism and unwanted prayer requests and unwanted
Yep.
attention, and the pain of everyone saying, well, she's the lady whose crazy husband left the church to become a Jew. That became a little bit less of a burden for her because of the way my former pastor handled it. So that
I was
was a
thinking,
great experience.
I was thinking that what he told you when you told him about the problems, I liked him already because he didn't just come up with all these excuses and try to prove you wrong. He
Mhm.
basically passed you on to somebody who might know the answers, and I think that was pretty honorable of him. That was good.
Yeah, I genuinely love the guy. I mean, if I thought that Jesus was God or Messiah, I would definitely be a member of that church again. I mean, he's
Right.
a great guy, great, loves people, loves helping the community.
I could see why you would go back there because he seems like he would be a very likable type person.
Oh yeah, in fact, I have zero qualms about helping them out in their annual backpack drive to help the community, because it's strictly a humanitarian cause. It's not
Nice.
proselytizing. So I will contribute gladly to any humanitarian cause, whether it's Christian, Jewish, Muslim, whatever, so long as there's no proselytization involved.
That's
So
great.
that's
That's great,
and
and I think that's the attitude Hashem has too. I think because people ask me, well, if Christianity is not true, why are miracles happening in Christianity? Well, miracles happen in every religion, and it's because God cares for all of humanity, regardless of what you call your faith. If you touch His heart, He's going to heal you, and it's like you. I mean, if things touch your heart and you can help out,
mm,
that's what you're doing. I think you're doing a great thing.
yeah,
Very good.
thanks.
Yep.
And so I found a rabbi that is very similar to my former pastor in the sense that he has a huge heart. He loves people. He loves his community. And of course, unlike my former pastor, rabbi is, he's a Jew. He was
Right.
raised Orthodox, ordained Orthodox, and he's very halachically minded. So I was honored to be able to connect with him very quickly after I left my church. I went on a search to find a synagogue. I contacted two conservative shuls and two Orthodox shuls, and basically decided I would make a few visits, and see what clicked best. And by divine coincidence, my rabbi actually replied to me directly from Facebook Messenger of the shul's Facebook page. And he set up a Zoom meeting with me within just a matter of days to discern whether or not I was a suitable, sincere candidate for conversion. And after the Zoom meeting, he decided that I was a suitable, sincere conversion for conversion. and I started converting within a month. And so took the conversion class. He was very knowledgeable, very gracious, very patient, very studied. I mean, he's, as you know, most rabbis are have insane studies. I mean, they have this degrees, they study all the time. And so the amount of knowledge that comes out of this guy's mouth every time he opens his mouth is just incredible to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I loved about the rabbinical approach versus the classic Christian approach is you are not only permitted, but encouraged to ask questions, question everything, challenge everything. And that's what I love about the classical Jewish approach is, most of the rabbis that I've studied with, that I've met and spoken to, they all, encourage you to ask questions, look deeper, challenge yourself, challenge others. And so, I quickly saw that the old, I guess, stereotype of the Jew just being taught whatever their rabbi tells them to believe, it's not true
Sure.
for the most part. I don't think I've met a Jew that just believes whatever the rabbis tell them to believe.
You answer every question with a question.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
And, the whole proverbial, two Jews, three opinions, and then you multiply that, you get four Jews, and it's what, how many? 12? You have to compound it. Anyway, so I
For the
really enjoy
just
the
for the
academic side.
for the Christian viewer right now, though, that they really take that two Jews, three opinions thing too far, in that they think, well, Jews just can't make up their minds, but that's actually not what that means.
No,
Um,
there's a lot of halakhic approaches
yeah,
but there's a lot of discussion. In fact, the Talmud is mostly discussion. It's only about
yeah,
I don't know, 5,000 discussions, and only about and a generous estimate would be maybe 15%, 10 to 15% of those discussions were ever
hmm,
decisively resolved. And so there's so many discussions that are still kind of up for debate. Sure, a lot of it was closed with the Shulchan Aruch and
hmm,
the and other documents that came out later, but there's still a lot of discussion going on a lot of topics that,
yeah.
so Christians kind of look at some of our sages, and they don't understand how to approach it because some of it is halakha, some of it isn't halakha, some of it is just discussion, some of it's speculation.
And halakha,
And
just
so,
just for the Christian viewer, is basically
yeah,
means the way that they apply and interpret and how they walk out their faith based on the text.
exactly. And halakha is more legally binding in an Orthodox or a conservative
Mm,
community. And just to explain a little bit more for perhaps casual viewers, there are some Jewish communities that have a stricter view of halakha, Jewish law, and others that have more of a um, Jewish law as a guideline, as reform or reconstructionist, to my knowledge. But as far as I know, conservative and Orthodox will view halakha, Jewish law, as legally binding. Although as a conservative, we take a different approach to halakha, and we look at it with a different lens, and
hmm,
we,
right.
we'll look at things with a minority and majority view. A lot of ideas that the Orthodox don't really consider. So,
That's true. Okay, so doubling back now to, I want to talk about your wife and your
mhm,
son for a minute because we know that she's still a dedicated Christian, and you're a Jewish convert. So
mhm,
your little boy. So in an ideal scenario, like I mentioned earlier, my wife's boss and her. His wife, who were of different faiths. In an ideal scenario, it would seem fair to both sides that mom takes him to church on Sundays and dad takes him to synagogue on Saturdays. That way,
mhm.
he's getting all of the information. Is that kind of what's happening with you, or is it a little bit more of a struggle?
It's a little bit more of a struggle. I mean, each situation is unique. And my rabbi is actually converted, as I think I may have mentioned, he's converted several people where their spouse or their children have not converted. And so when you have an interfaith family situation, it's very precarious, and you have to deal with it on a case by case basis and make sure to prioritize shalom bayis, or peace in the
Mm-hmm.
home. And in our case, when my wife and I initially had discussions, when I told her I no longer believe in Jesus, one of the deciding factors of us staying together, one of the contingencies is
Got it.
she has to raise our son in the church as a Christian. And I'm okay with that because I was raised as a Christian. I was able to see past it,
Mm-hmm.
and he may eventually as well. He'll be
Okay.
exposed to Judaism, and my
Sure.
rabbi knows that my wife and child are not going to be in the synagogue, but he was able to, look at halakha and look at the approach and say, okay, he can still make contributions to his own Jewishness and still make contributions to the greater Jewish community, and so he can still be Jewish. That's cool. So, what my approach is my son will be exposed to Judaism in the home with Pesach coming up and other Jewish holidays. And I'm not going to impose it on him. I'm just going to expose him to it. And if he wants to become a Jew later on in life, he'll make the decision. I'm not going to impose it on him.
Okay.
And I think that's a fair, kind of a fair deal to make, because it's more exposure to Judaism than I ever had as a kid.
Sure. I think it can be good because if he's raised in Christianity, where he's basically going to be somewhat digging his roots into it,
Mm-hmm.
when he starts getting older, when he starts turning 9, 10 years old, 11 years old, and he's like, "How come Dad doesn't come?" And he'll start asking you, and then maybe you're allowed to tell him why, and so you might turn him into be a great counter missionary one day, for all we know.
It's very possible
Mm.
because he's very academic, as I am. So
Nice. Oh yeah.
he'll for sure be asking questions, and I'll be as forthright and as, I guess, as gentle as I can,
Hmm.
because you know what, I don't want to condition my kid to mock people that
Sure.
believe differently, but certainly to question and challenge them, but in a situation of mutual respect.
Hmm.
So I mean, I'm on a couple of different boards where I'll challenge and question people's beliefs, but I try to do it as I wish to be treated. As the great Hillel the Elder is known to have said, that which you despise, don't do to others. The
Right.
rest is
Yeah.
commentary, don't study.
That's the
So
essence of Torah. That's right.
exactly. And the other thing that I kind of live by is there's another common saying in the sages that talks about derech eretz. And derech eretz is often, they say that derech eretz precedes Torah. And derech eretz, for people who are unfamiliar with the saying, it's
Yeah.
basically, it means the way of the land, but it's often, I guess, interpreted to mean basic human decency.
Hmm.
Be a mensch, be a decent
Yep.
human being, and then study Torah, and then observe Torah.
Right on.
And so, basically, I don't want to, drive people away from truth by treating them like they're idiots.
Yeah. Right. For sure. Well, it would be amiss of me to not mention these.
Mhm.
So, guys, if you're watching this and these testimonies are really hitting you, like it hit me, there are certain books. There's a book that I don't have in front of me right now called "Leaving Jesus" by James Wood Jr. And that was the one that helped me solidify my choices to leave the New Testament behind. But these two books here, "Judaism and Christianity: A Contrast" by Rabbi Stuart Federer, and then "The Real Reasons Why Jews Don't Believe in Jesus." These are both his books. And then if you want more of a collegiate study rather than an easy read, these are one of the best resources out right now. They're upside down. Hold on, sorry. Glad I saw that on video. Volumes 1 and 2, Rabbi Singer's Let's Get Biblical. And you'll find in the front there's a glossary and an index in the back for easy thumbing through. Like right now, if you just asked me for a verse, I could probably find it. What page it's on within a matter of about 60 seconds. So it's a very well laid out book. And you can find these on outreachjudaism.org and these on whatjewsbelieve.org. So, but guys, thank you all for tuning in. My friend, thank you for giving your testimony. Thank you for being, pardon me, thank you for, yabba dabba doo. Man, I saw my coffee and I was thinking, that sure does taste good. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for joining me today, my new friend, and I'm sure we'll be keeping in touch. When this video becomes available, Mr. Edwards, I'll send a link for you in your messenger and also put it in that master list. And also, guys, if you're wanting to see where all these are, on my Facebook page, I've got a master list pinned to the top of my Facebook page. It's got all the names and the dates and a link to each one of these testimonies if you're interested. So be sure to hit the like button, share these videos with your friends, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on all notifications so you don't miss a beat, and we'll catch you later at another time. My friend, it's been a pleasure, and you should be well. Take care, everybody. Shalom.
If you enjoy this channel and the content, and it has changed your life, or perhaps the life of a loved one or a close friend, would you please consider supporting this work? You can click this link and it'll take you directly to my website with the donate button. Or there's a Patreon link and a mailing address for snail mail if you would prefer. If you do donate, please do me a favor and leave me a phone number where I can contact you and thank you properly. I hope you all have a wonderful 2025. Shalom.